understanding your sphere of influence to preserve your energy and also to be most effective. That is going to be the topic of this episode of Chi Life. So you've probably noticed and been influenced by a lot of things going on in the world over the last few years. I guess, to some extent there's always a lot going on in the world, but particularly the last few years and even the last year, there seems to be maybe a little bit more than normal, and things that are quite momentous, things that are quite disturbing in many ways. And these have affected all of us in a variety of different ways. Some of us, they have a much more direct effect. And for others of us, we see these things going on, and at the very least, maybe they're a bit concerning to us, which is natural. It's natural to be concerned about what's going on in the world around you, because it does have, at the very least, a ripple effect through to each and every one of us, because we are all connected in a variety of ways. Obviously we have indirect connections through other people and through, the actions someone may have will filter through and affect other things, and other things that will come to affect us. But we also have a connection just as part of humanity as well. And yeah, a lot of things lately that have been quite concerning and have caused a lot of conflict between different parts of humanity with different opinions about different things and so on. So I'm not going to get into the details of all of these events and goings on, but rather talk a little bit about a useful way of thinking about things and about our interaction with the world around us and with other people. Because sometimes when there's so much going on around us which is deeply concerning to us, it can be very easy to become overwhelmed with that, and for this to affect our energy, really drag us down, maybe make us feel exhausted, overwhelmed, upset, and so on, which isn't good for us personally. And further to that, it also means that when we're feeling like that, we will tend to be less effective. We're actually going to do less good things to make the world a more positive place. And so it's not useful from that perspective either. And so I think a really good thing to think about when we're considering all these things going on in the world and how we're going to respond to them is to really think about what your sphere of influence is. Because there can be a tendency when there's, some big thing going on somewhere in the world, maybe quite distant from us, even on the other side of the world, there can be a tendency for us to send all of our attention, or a large amount of our attention there. And there's a saying, quite a common saying, that where our attention goes, our energy flows. And so when we put our attention there, a lot of our energy goes there as well, which means we're often draining our energy to some extent by putting our attention on whatever that is, so that we can't use it for other things. And it's helpful to think realistically about, okay, is putting all my attention and energy into this serving any valuable, any beneficial purpose? Sometimes it might. Sometimes there might be clear actions that you can take that will be beneficial. And there's a variety of different actions that you can take. There can be, sometimes speaking about an issue that can be valuable because it helps to shape people's opinions about things, and that can have a flow-on effect and influence. Petitions, things like that can be useful as well. Donating money, donating, supplies, things like this. Something tangible that can actually have a beneficial effect. Great. You are having a positive effect. It's great to do those sorts of things. On the other hand, simply worrying, arguing, becoming too caught up in and emotional about these things that might be going on isn't really helping anything about the situation. It's not helping the people directly concerned. It's not helping yourself. And it may actually be having a detrimental impact on you and on your interactions with other people and with the environment immediately around you. So it's helpful to think about, like, where is my sphere of influence? What do I not necessarily have control over? Some things in our lives we have a degree of control over, but what things do I have a significant influence on? And apportion out our energy and attention according to how much influence we have within that sphere. So we clearly have a lot of influence over ourselves, over our own body, our own mood, our own emotions, our own health, all of these sorts of things. That's our most immediate sphere of influence, and it makes sense to put a lot of attention on this and a lot of our energy into this, because being healthy, being balanced, being calm, being considerate of other people, it starts to flow out to other people, but just being healthy and balanced and calm in ourselves does have a positive influence on others around us, which can then have a ripple effect outwards. Moving a step out from that, where else do we have a sphere of influence? For most of us, we'll have a significant sphere of influence on people relatively close to us, not just ourselves, but people, our family members, our friends, maybe people in our immediate community. And so we can consider, well, what positive things are we doing within that sphere of influence? Are we doing things to help out the people in need, or to help to, avoid issues or help people get out of a problem that are in that close sphere of influence around us? Because in putting our attention and energy into that, we're more likely to have an actual positive effect. And this is one of the things that is often gets left behind when we send all of our energy and attention out into something far away from us, because we don't have that much influence on that, but all our energy is going there, and so we stop having the positive effect on the people, on the situations immediately around us. We can then go out a little bit further, a little bit more broadly in our community. Maybe there's some things within our city or within our state that we can have some significant amount of influence on. So it makes sense that maybe we apportion some of our energy out into that as well, and so on outwards. When we do this, when we recognize our sphere of influence, for a start, that's going to help us to stay more calm, more balanced, recognizing essentially what we can really affect and what we can't. That can help us to come to terms and acceptance of, some of the many things that we experience around us, and recognize, hey, I can do what I can do, and it's okay for me not necessarily to be able to do much about other things. That's okay. That's just the nature of life and the level of influence that we have. We'll also achieve a lot more good in the world, and that has a ripple effect. If we all do that, and we're all influencing ourselves positively, and then the people next to us positively, they are going to be, more positive, more happy, more balanced. That will affect the people next to them, and outwards. And eventually that does have a global effect. Now, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't have any focus on things far from us. No, by all means. But when we have this perspective, we can keep that in balance. We can allow our energy to be most effective. We can use our personal resources most effectively to create good in the world and a healthy balance for ourselves as well. Now, this will be, how our spheres of influence work will be different for different people in different situations. For some of us, our sphere of influence will be very much just immediately around us. And we may not have a lot of influence beyond that. But some people will be in different situations. Some people will actually have a significant influence on things much further from them. People like politicians, for example, it's a very direct example, because they're influencing, big decisions that are going to affect people far away. So yeah, of course, it's helpful for them to put a lot of their energy and attention into some of these things. But also other people who have connections globally, people who have, particularly in this day of social media or even regular media, people who have an audience who they communicate with, who are all around the world and so on. Yeah, it makes sense for them to put more of a focus on some of these things that are much further from them as well. But, just because they're doing that doesn't mean that that's what we should do in our individual lives. Anyway, I thought this was a topic that might be helpful for a few people. I do know, certainly, I see, quite a few people around me who have over the last little while tended to become a bit overwhelmed with, some of the different things going on around them, to the extent that it really has been detrimental to them for no good reason. Them being overwhelmed hasn't helped them, hasn't helped other things in the world. And when we have this perspective of considering our sphere of influence and putting our focus and our energy according to our levels and sphere of influence, we tend to have a happier, more harmonious interaction with all of the world around us. I hope that's been useful, and I look forward to seeing you on the next vlog soon.